I grew up in a very, very simple way. I was so much connected with nature. First of all, we were a big family, and all my siblings, I had 8 siblings, were either musicians or they played music, played an instrument. But most of all, we were a very simple and normal family. And we had not thought about big things. We had no TV at home. We had actually, as I remember, during the weekdays, very simple food. We eat any meat. Not, we would not like it. We would have liked it, but we just had no money. Only on Sunday. We were actually not in contact with the world, I would say. And I was 12, actually 11 years old when the family moved to the capital town of Austria, to Vienna. And suddenly I was in contact with the world. Suddenly we saw trains and cars and ambulance with the noise, with the signals, with the horns and police and everything what interests young kids actually. But the time till that moment, I got in love so much with the nature, with the normal life. We were in the Alps during the summer all the time. We saw the animals and we were climbing, we were on the mountains and we were singing, we were playing together, knowing nothing about where we could not go into any concert hall or to any opera theater. And it created somehow a natural connection with my music making, and a natural connection with the life I still live now, knowing much more about the world, being much more connected with the concert halls, with the modernism of the world, being on aeroplanes, being on hotels, which I had never dreamed of. And this simple life, believe it or not, it affects my music making. I always think about the nature of a phrase, nature of music. I mean, I hear the music, I hear also the sound of the nature. And it helps a lot for me to create even more natural connections with music. Many composers in that time, in earlier times, anyway, they had the connection much more with nature as we nowadays probably have. I would say generally, of course, there's always some exceptions. Listen to the Pastoral Symphony of Beethoven, Schubert's music, which especially the songs, which has so many elements in connection with the nature and human elements. Bruckner and Gustav Mahler, Dvorak symphonies are so connected with the Volksmusic, with his own life. He was a viola player, he was organ player, and then he lived a wonderful life in the nature in Vysoká, in his summer home. Close to Prague, a wonderful area, and we know that. And without that, Dvorak would probably never be able to write such a wonderful music, very poetic, and he really felt the sound of a wood, the sound of silence, but also the sound of animals, like in the Dvorak 8th Symphony, when you hear in the second movement the what you call the call of the birds. And he puts so many things which he heard in the nature into the music, the same what Bruckner did in his 4th Symphony. same what Gustav Mahler did when he called in his first symphony already, wie ein Naturlaut, a sound of nature. It was very popular at that time. I think it's still in that time, but these people had created their music in connection with the nature. By the way, the name Honeck is a Czech name, and it is my family, my ancestors were actually close to Brünn, close to the city which unfortunately became very famous, the Battle of Austerlitz, where Napoleon was fighting against also the Austrians, and so, but they had lost the battle, and so many people died. And my family escaped from that battle, and instead of being imprisoned or be a slave of Napoleon, they went to western part of Austria. And still my father were talking about the Czech soul, the Czech mentality, even if he was born in Austria already, and about the Czech brass, a famous brass musician, the famous Czech musicians. And it always reminded me what wonderful sound these Czech musicians still have, but in former times definitely produced, and how much Dvořák must have heard these Czech musicians play probably his music, but not only, also other music, and this sound is very much integrated in his symphonies. Unfortunately not, even if I'm principal guest conductor of the Czech Philharmonic Orchestra in Prague, I really cannot understand the language, but I understand probably a little bit kind of the rhythm and the tone of the of when people speak Czech, and I'm always very much impressed how much Smetana and Dvořák, and especially also Janacek, put the Czech language, the rhythm of the Czech language, into their music. And it fascinates me very, very much, and I think I very much use actually also this expression in explaining certain phrases. I switch between English and German. The older generation understands a little bit more German, because they had German in the school, but the young generation, they mostly speak more English than German. And hopefully in the end they will understand me. In my contract says that I supposed to be 10 weeks a year in Pittsburgh, but there will be always an additional gala, we will have a recording week, or we have also some weeks for preparation for tours, and in the end it will be always 14-15 weeks in a year which I spend in Pittsburgh. Of course, I'm very much responsible. Anything what is connected with music, first of all I have to stay on stage and conducting the music and keep the world-class level of the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra. That's my main purpose, and that's the reason why I was elected as a music director. And I would never allow that this main purpose would be diminished by other works. But as it is no secret that to be a music director in America means also a lot of other engagements and other involvements, which is very good and very healthy actually, even if it's demanding for a music director. But I always like it very much to give my time also with this great city and great musicians, because I think it's first of all necessary, and I like to surround this orchestra with many friends and many ideas, and giving what I can give to the orchestra, to give all my heart to the city, to make it, to make the everything what we produce in the Heinz Hall to be an event, to be a gala, to be as good as possible and exciting as possible. And to be on stage is, of course, the main purpose, to make fantastic music, and that people are going with that, whatever you do, which kind of repertoire you play. But on the other hand, it's always important for me personally to meet people, to meet those who might not always go to a symphony concert, and to explain them, especially young people. Sometimes I go into schools and speaking to young students and explaining my life, what I'm doing as a conductor, explaining the music. Sometimes I'm invited to a club or to another event and so on. So a lot of things to do, and of course it's clear that I have to do a lot of meetings to prepare the seasons, to prepare the ideas, to brainstorm. Just a minute ago, before I met you, I had the pleasure also to have this one of the many meetings with the artistic department, where we go through what do we want to do, what can we do differently, which way can we go, and what kind of ideas would work, especially for Pittsburgh. And it needs always time to brainstorming. I'm not the type who want to say I nailed down a symphony number 9 of Beethoven and adding another concerto or so, which is wonderful. We should do this also. But nowadays we should be much more creative and innovative, and as some says, ideas doesn't cost any money, but to get really ideas, we need to speak about what fits in, and it's always wonderful to sit together with 5-6 creative members of the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra and talk about how we are creating a season. And it happens a lot of times that we had a great idea and we have to postpone it because we think it is better than another season, or there are sometimes financial reasons why postpone something. So I like these meetings very much, even if it takes time away from mine, but I think this is one of the most important elements to be a music director, beside making music. Oh, definitely, yes. I think every conductor has some idols, I would say, especially in my younger time, where I had the pleasure to play as a viola player in the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra. I watched every conductor, and was so keen to see how they're making the music, what are the tricks, and what is the philosophy and concept of the conductors. And of course I watched Lenny Bernstein, Herbert von Karajan, Carlos Kleiber, Lorin Maazel, who was one of my successor, and Carlo Maria Giullini and Abbado, Riccardo Muti, so it's really wonderful conductors. But I watched also those who might have not have such a big name, because I thought I can learn from every conductor. And in fact, I really did. I analyzed the conductors and was asking the questions, why does it work with one and why does it not work with the other one? And what is the musical language of one conductor? How are the gestures of one conductor and compared to the others? And you realize they are so differently. If you look on the conducting style of Herbert von Karajan, Lenny Bernstein, or George Scholti, how it can't be more different of all the three. But it worked. And it worked because they are extremely strong personalities, and they were very honest in their music making. And I was always impressed by these people, and because they were really able to bring the orchestra to a greatest level of music making. And it is no secret that I studied all of them, and it's no secret that I admired Carlos Kleiber also very, very much in his gestures, and I must say it is wonderful how he made music, but also Riccardo Muti, how he rehearsed the orchestra was amazing also. So the most important was, how do they do music? How did they transport their message to the orchestra musicians? That is half of the success. And it came always to my mind that we young conductors have firstly to learn to know yourself. What do you want to do the music? Is that what you think is really what you also can express with your personality? Because one thing is clear, the orchestra musicians will immediately identify you. They will immediately see whether your music making is honest or not. So the first thing what we do is, and what I try to do and still try to do, to find the most honest way, deepest way of making music, that they really can stand behind of that what I do. And believe me, it is very easy for a conductor just to run through a piece and conduct a piece. I had to do it once. I remember I stepped in, there was an emergency, and they called me on very, very short notice the evening before, and I had to learn a new piece. I said yes, because I wanted to help them. And I learned a new piece, and I did it. And it went fortunately well, so you can do it. But I would say, compared to the standards what I normally really like, it's far away to stand behind everything what I did. But the purpose was just to help that we could do that we had not to cancel a concert. So it is easy just to conduct through and to organize the music and to make beautiful music. That's fine. But that's far not enough for me. I really like to dig in and to answer the question, why does the composer compose that? What is the sense? What can I do with the music? What is the opinion of the composer? And how can I transport that in our time? That people understand it not only technically but also emotionally. And that fascinates me all the time, actually. And I think this is probably an endless question, but where I will have to answer the whole life. And I always study pieces, even if I have conducted hundreds of times. I study these pieces again and discover new things. Well, I think, why didn't I have discovered that earlier? What is the reason? Why didn't you see it before? And I'm so happy that also elder conductor colleagues tell me the same, that what they experience. We have to fight for the result, to fight for a piece. And in the end it comes a result which is hopefully very unique and very new. And that's actually my goal. I want that the people hear the piece, even if it's so famous, to hear it like it is presented the first time. And there are a lot of elements. Of course, you have to dig in what was tradition 100 years ago when they conducted Dvorak, 200 years ago when they conducted Beethoven. What was new for that at that time, and what's shocking for that time. Da 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 dum, da 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 dum. What a start. Nowadays we are taken for granted, or the dissonance. What kind of impact it had 200 years ago, 100 years ago. But nowadays we are used to dissonance. So for me as a conductor, to bring a famous piece to alive means sharpen a dissonance, make the drama very dramatic, make the story behind more understandable for our souls who are so much connected with films, with computers, with technique, and we have everything experienced. But to bring it to new life, that's my goal. A lot of research is necessary, I must tell you. It is. I love this work, I must say. I really like it because it's so interesting also to see what is the content and expression of the music. And I'm amazed and to learn how much Mahler's music is connected with the old Austrian Volksmusik. The way they played more than 100 years before is very different from that we do now. Speaking about portamenti, so slide one note, it was very common in that time. In the 50s and 60s and 70s, it was completely forbidden. But we should not forget, it was common in Mahler's time. Playing rubato, that means change the tempo, fast and quick, go forward and back and so on. It was common in Mahler's time. Nowadays we are trained to be very stable in one tempo. And to have some certain things which Mahler written, which came out, or coming out from the Austrian Volksmusik, that means for me, study Austrian Volksmusik. How did they play? How did they play it rhythmically? Because it made me always thinking, what does Mahler means when he say the most interesting thing and most important thing in his score is not written, it's between the bar lines. No composer in the world can really write a tradition. He can might be write ridardando or be quicker and then slower and then so. But what kind of vibrato do they use, for example? Is the upbeat very strong or less? Is the second beat like a Viennese waltz? Is the second beat how much early it is? And looking at these kind of questions, when you think that it was quite common and very popular to play the music of the Strauss family, how many waltzes do we play still where the second beat is early, the famous Viennese rhythm of the waltz? But Mahler used the same type of waltz in a very different way. He put a waltz in a rustical way, a Landler, a very sentimental Landler. So very different types of Austrian waltzes. And I think it's right to do in the tradition of 100 years ago, like we do it with Johann Strauss. Even if he has not written that, but he didn't need to write it because the musicians at that time understood how it had to be. And that makes then nowadays a Mahler interpretation also, I would say, a little bit new, a little bit fresh. I just conducted half a year ago in Vienna in a Musikverein Mahler's first symphony, And I was fascinated how great this orchestra played, the Vienna Symphony Orchestra played this symphony, but I also had to remind them and their own tradition. Think about how we express the Viennese, the real typical Viennese music, and suddenly you get a completely new picture of symphony, and that interests me. And I can go on and on with Tchaikovsky or Dvorak, or might be Beethoven and even Brahms. It is a joy to go back to the originals, and but also a joy to hopefully to be successful, to transport the message of the composer to people of our time. Oh yes, there are a lot of. I think I would nearly everybody love to sit together. But I think if I have to only to choose one, I might like to talk with Mozart. He has to offer so many secrets and so many things which I really love to discover and to understand more. And I would like also to meet Gustav Mahler, because not only of his great composing and personality, but he was also a conductor. And to know a little bit, would probably ask him about his experience as a conductor, but probably would also ask him questions about his spirituality, because for me Gustav Mahler is a very spiritual composer who a lot of thought about the questions of life and death, and what happens after the death, and what was he thinking of a human being, the sense of human being, all those questions which me personally also interests very much. It is a shame that I have to actually to leave out some composers, but yeah, how can I ignore Igor Stravinsky? You know, I'm thinking about or even Shostakovich. How would it be wonderful to talk about his view and how he suffered of this communistic regime, what brought him to make the music so great, and so it is always we only can guess how the people were thinking through their letters and biography, and of course through their music. And definitely Brahms' great relationship with Robert Schumann and Clara Schumann, there would have been a lot of interest, because I think this influenced him a lot, and I would be definitely interested. And his relationship to Anton Bruckner, by the way, would be also, and the relationship to the new German school, and those who surrounded Richard Wagner and the followers of Richard Wagner, and all this famous battle between these two fantastic lines in that time. A lot of questions I would ask them. I'm very, very happy that Rainer made also the choice to accept the invitation to come to Pittsburgh, because I always admired my brother, because he was playing always so sensitive, and it was a beautiful tone, and I think he's one of the best example of a violinist who represents the Viennese violin school, I would say. And even this concerto, which we will perform this weekend, the Britain violin concerto, which is of course not a Viennese concerto, but it is you can present such a wonderful noblesse in the sound with all these challenging technical elements which the second movement offers, which is, there are some passages you cannot play really so in a certain tempo. But I'm very happy that to make music again. It's the first time in America I make music with my brother, and I only did it one time around 10 years ago in Japan with the Brahms Violin Concerto. Otherwise I never had wanted to mix up family things, and then so people might be sometimes misunderstand that, you know, but I thought I really would like to present Rainer here in Pittsburgh with my orchestra. We are one family, the orchestra musicians, and I think he feels very well and feels very much integrated in the Pittsburgh music family now. I know it is very unusual to invite a concertmaster of another orchestra to play solo, but in this case it was for me logical and natural to do it. By the way, isn't it wonderful also that we have in this weekend's concerts actually the concertmaster of the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra, the concertmaster of the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra, and the concertmaster of the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra. That's very unique, and that's makes this very special. In fact, we had 2 days ago a special fundraise evening where my brother Rainer and Noah Bendix-Spelli were playing together, a duo. It was for me very touching, and remembering that concertmasters of 3 great orchestras are here and making music. It made me thinking the music world is very small and we all belong together.